The Mississippi sun had finally dipped below the horizon, but the heat clung to the asphalt like a heavy blanket. It was a typical July evening in the small town of Harmony Creek, the kind of sticky, slow-moving night that made the cicadas buzz on a low, constant hum. I wiped a bead of sweat from my brow, my backpack slung over one shoulder, feeling the familiar weight of my schoolbooks. I was just a kid, 17, with a future that felt as wide and open as the country roads I walked. My mind was on tomorrow's history test, and the sweet tea my mama promised would be waiting for me, ice cold and perfect in a tall glass. The walk from my part-time job at the grocery store was one I'd made 1,000 times. A straight shot down Elm Street, past houses with porch lights just beginning to flicker on. I loved my town, but I knew its secrets. I knew which steps to skip on the sidewalk and which yards had dogs that barked but never bit. I was a good kid, the kind who said yes ma'am and no sir, who stayed out of trouble because I had seen what trouble could do. My dreams were simple. Graduate, maybe go to state college, make my family proud. Tonight the air was thick with the smell of honeysuckle and freshly cut grass, a scent that usually brought me comfort. But as I turned onto the last stretch of my journey, a different feeling crept in, a quiet unease that settled in the pit of my stomach. The streetlights cast long dancing shadows, and for the first time, they didn't feel like friendly guides. They felt like watchful eyes. I clutched the straps of my backpack a little tighter. I wasn't doing anything wrong. I was just a boy walking home. I repeated it in my head like a mantra, a prayer for safe passage. I kept my head down, focusing on the cracks in the pavement, counting them to keep my mind steady. 1, 2, 3. I could already picture my front porch, the squeak of the screen door, the welcome coolness of the house. I was so close. The ordinary rhythm of my steps was the only sound I allowed myself to hear, a steady beat against the symphony of the southern night. I told myself there was nothing to fear on a street I knew better than the back of my hand. But fear has a way of finding you, even on familiar ground. It doesn't care about your grades or your dreams. It doesn't care that you're just a kid trying to get home safely. On this sweltering Mississippi evening, fear was cruising slowly down Elm Street, its presence announced not by a siren, but by a low, predatory rumble. It was the sound of an engine that wasn't just passing through, it was hunting. And in that moment, under the watchful, buzzing streetlights, my ordinary walk home was about to become a chapter in a story I never wanted to be a part of. The sweet tea and history books faded from my mind, replaced by a cold, sharp dread. The police cruiser rolled up beside me, silent as a shark cutting through water. It didn't speed, it crawled, matching my pace step for step. My heart hammered against my ribs. I kept my eyes forward, pretending not to notice, praying it would just keep going. But it didn't. The car stopped, and the window slid down with an electric whir. "Hey, you!" a voice barked, sharp and edged with steel. I stopped, my feet feeling like they were glued to the sidewalk. I turned slowly, my hands held up and open, just like my father had taught me. "Yes, officer?" I said, my own voice sounding small and shaky in the thick night air. I saw the man behind the wheel, Officer Coulter, a face known in the community for its permanent scowl and quick temper. Officer Coulter stepped out of the car, leaving the door ajar. The blue and red lights started flashing, painting the quiet street in panicked strobes of color. They danced across my face, across the neat houses and clipped lawns, turning a peaceful scene into one of confrontation. "Where you headed in such a hurry?" Coulter asked, his voice dripping with suspicion. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my composure. "I'm just walking home, sir, from my job at the market." I pointed down the street. I lived just 3 houses down. I tried to offer a small, respectful smile, another lesson from my father, but it felt weak and fragile under the officer's piercing gaze. The air grew tense, charged with an unspoken accusation. "Empty your pockets. Put your bag on the ground," Coulter commanded, his hand resting on the butt of his holstered gun. I complied without a word of protest. I did everything right. I moved slowly, deliberately, making sure my hands were visible at all times. I placed my wallet, my keys, and my phone on the hood of the cruiser. I gently set my backpack on the pavement. I was innocent, and I believed with the fading naivety of youth that my innocence would be my shield. But Coulter wasn't looking for innocence. He was looking for a reason, any reason, to assert his power. And my quiet compliance seemed only to fuel his aggression. The officer's frustration boiled over. He found nothing. No weapons, no drugs, just a teenage boy with a worn wallet and a history textbook. For Coulter, that wasn't enough. "You think you're smart, don't you?" he snarled, shoving me hard against the car. My head hit the metal with a sickening thud. The world spun. Before I could even cry out, the first blow landed, a fist to my gut that stole the air from my lungs. Then another and another. The pain was sharp, electric, and absolute. The flashing lights blurred into a whirlwind of red and blue as the sounds of the quiet evening were shattered by the officer's grunts and my desperate gasps for air. Porch lights that had been flickering on were now discreetly switched off. Curtains twitched in windows, then fell still. The residents of Elm Street saw the flashing lights. They heard the officer's angry shouts, and they saw the boy, Jeremiah, crumple against the police car. They knew him. They had watched him grow up, mowing lawns in the summer, shoveling snow in the winter. They knew he was a good kid, but fear was a powerful silencer. It whispered to them to stay inside, to lock their doors, to not get involved. Getting involved meant attracting the wrong kind of attention. It meant putting your own family at risk. And so they watched in silence, their hearts heavy with a shared, unspoken shame. The community became an audience to an injustice they felt powerless to stop. But not everyone stayed inside. Not everyone let fear win. From the porch of the third house down, the one with the neatly trimmed rose bushes, an old man watched. His name was Samuel, but everyone in the neighborhood just called him Pop. He was a retired deacon, a man whose hands were as calloused from decades of hard work as his spirit was softened by a lifetime of faith. He had seen the ugliness of the world before, in the Jim Crow South of his youth, and he recognized its reflection in the flashing lights on Jeremiah's face. He saw not just a boy being beaten, but his own grandson, his own son, his own history. His wife pleaded with him from the doorway, "Samuel, don't. It's not our fight." Pop picked up his wooden cane, the one he carved himself from a piece of solid oak. He didn't need it to walk, but it gave him a sense of steadiness. "Every child is our child," he said, his voice calm but firm, cutting through his wife's fearful protests. "And every fight for what's right is our fight." He opened his screen door, and the squeak sounded like a roar in the night's heavy silence. He walked slowly, deliberately down his porch steps and onto the sidewalk. He didn't run, he didn't shout. His presence was a quiet, unmovable force, a testament to a courage that had been tested by fire and time. He was just an old man with a cane, walking toward a storm. As Pop approached, Officer Coulter barely noticed him, too consumed by his rage. But Pop's voice, when it came, was not loud, yet it carried the weight of generations. "That's enough, son." Coulter spun around, startled, his face contorted in anger. "Stay back, old man. This is police business." Pop did not flinch. He simply stood there a few feet away and placed himself between the officer and Jeremiah's bruised body. He held up a hand, not in aggression, but as a shield. "This boy's on his way home," Pop said, his eyes meeting Coulter's without a trace of fear. "And I'm going to walk with him the rest of the way. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want, and this child shall not want for a protector tonight." Unseen by Officer Coulter and Pop, a small red light was blinking from a second-story window across the street. A neighbor, frozen by fear, but moved by conscience, was recording the entire scene on their phone. The lens captured everything. Coulter's unchecked aggression, my terrified innocence, and Pop's incredible act of bravery. It recorded Pop's calm, steady voice quoting scripture as he shielded me. The video was a silent witness, a digital memory that could not be intimidated or erased. Within an hour, it was uploaded. Within a day, it had spread like wildfire, first through Harmony Creek, then across the state, and finally across the nation. The moving image told a story that words alone could not. The consequences for Officer Coulter were swift and decisive. The video was undeniable proof. The Harmony Creek Police Department, facing immense public pressure and outrage, had no choice but to act. Coulter was suspended, then fired, and finally charged with assault. The silent witnesses found their voices coming forward to corroborate the story the video told. Justice, for once, was not a distant dream, but a tangible reality, brought about by the courage of one old man and the quiet action of a neighbor with a phone. The system that had so often protected its own was forced to hold one of its own accountable, a small but significant victory for the community. In the days that followed, Pop's house became a sanctuary for me. My physical wounds, the bruised ribs, the black eye, the cuts on my face began to heal. But the deeper wounds, the ones on my soul, were harder to mend. The trust I had in the world had been shattered. Pop sat with me on the porch, not with lectures or grand speeches, but with quiet companionship. He brought me cool glasses of lemonade and shared stories from his own life, stories of hardship overcome by faith. He read from his worn Bible, the words of the Psalms offering a balm to my raw and wounded spirit. Fear is a liar, son, Pop would say. It tells you you're alone, but God is always with you. The community is with you. Slowly, with Pop's gentle guidance and his family's unwavering love, I began to heal. I started to see that the evil of one man did not represent the whole world. I saw the flood of support from my community, the prayers from the church, the people who dropped off meals and offered words of encouragement. I learned that while one person could inflict terrible pain, the love and compassion of many could be a powerful medicine. Pop's faith was not just in God, it was in the goodness of people. He taught me that true strength wasn't about the absence of fear, but about standing up and doing what's right, even when you're afraid. The incident on Elm Street changed me. The boy who once kept his head down, hoping not to be noticed, found a new purpose. The fear that had once paralyzed me was slowly transformed into a quiet, burning resolve. I saw firsthand how one person's courage could ignite a movement and how a community, when united, could demand and achieve justice. I was no longer just a victim of a brutal attack. I was a survivor, a witness to the power of love in the face of hate. Pop's example had planted a seed in my heart, and that seed began to grow into a fierce desire to make a difference, to ensure no other kid in my town had to endure what I went through. Inspired by Pop's unwavering bravery, I began to speak out. I started small, sharing my story with my church youth group, then at community meetings. My voice, once shaky, grew stronger with each telling. I spoke not with anger, but with a profound sense of purpose and a wisdom beyond my years. I organized peaceful protests and voter registration drives, channeling my pain into positive action. I became a leader, a voice for the voiceless in my community. The young people of Harmony Creek, who had once felt powerless, now looked to me as an example. I showed them that their voices mattered and that they had the power to shape their own futures. I never forgot the man who had stood for me when I couldn't stand for myself. I spent countless hours on Pop's porch listening to his stories and absorbing his wisdom. My gratitude for Pop was immeasurable, a debt I knew I could only repay by living a life of service and courage, just as Pop had. I understood that Pop hadn't just saved me from a physical beating that night. He had saved my spirit from being broken. He had shown me that even in the darkest of moments, a single light of compassion could illuminate the path forward, a path toward healing and hope. Today, when you walk down Elm Street, you can still feel the lingering heat of a Mississippi evening, but the air feels different. It feels lighter, filled with a sense of hope that wasn't there before. I'm now a young man preparing for college to study law, and I carry Pop's legacy with me in everything I do. My story, and Pop's, became a powerful reminder for the people of Harmony Creek and beyond. It is a testament to the fact that love is stronger than hate, that courage can be found in the quietest of souls, and that the strength of a community bound by faith and fellowship can indeed move mountains and bring forth a new dawn of justice.